Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the podcast today, we have Adrian Tobey. Adrian, welcome.
Hi, well, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So, hi everyone. My name is Adrian. I am the CEO and founder of a WordPress plugin organization called Groundhog. We build CRM and marketing automation tools to help small businesses launch their funnel, grow the list, and scale their business. Wasn't always in that industry though, and it was a little bit of a roundabout way to get to where I am today. I just turned 24. So got started relatively early in university. Not exactly a unique story, but it's always a fun one.
You're hopefully covering your story today with the intention that other Gen Zers will listen to it and see that it's possible for them also to go into business, because I don't meet that many people in your age range that are business owners, and the anecdotal evidence that I have is that there is a mindset of a younger person, and that mindset is that it's too early for them to do, essentially. And you've proved that it's the case that it's not too early to do, providing you have the skills. So I'm hoping to go through your story so that you can basically say how you did it. So where does your story start?
So my story starts when I was very, very, very young. So my family has always been entrepreneurial. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My father was a jazz musician who got something called tinnitus. 10% of the United States population actually suffers from varying degrees of tinnitus. And it's kind of like a lesser known affliction. What it is it's ringing in the ears, but it's inside your brain, behind your inner ear, and it's always there. And if you've ever heard like a loud bang go off, like a firecracker or maybe a firework going off really close to you, you'll know exactly what tinnitus sufferers live with for their entire lives, essentially. So for a jazz musician, that was quite crippling. And my dad turned to essentially digital marketing as a way to provide for the family. So he went and did a lot of courses and learned about what marketing was. And this is like way back in kind of 2008, 2009, where, you know, Google was still in its infancy compared to what it is today. So all of the marketing strategies at this point were new. Search engine optimization was relatively easy. There was, you know, it was just like a couple backlinks, you know, keyword stuffing on pages and stuff like that. So my dad was really getting into this whole digital marketing thing while I was growing up, and I was obviously still in school. I'm 24 right now. So, you know, back then I would have been around 10, 12 years old. But I was just observing and I'd watch, and what my dad did eventually was he took this on the road. So what he would do is, you know, he went out and learned all of this stuff about digital marketing, and he was selling his sheet music essentially online. At one point in time, if you were anywhere in the world and you Googled sheet music or something of that nature, paultoby.com, which is the domain he used to share and sell his sheet music, was #1 in the results. Obviously, that is no longer the case for a variety of reasons, but yeah. So he took this knowledge of how to rank on Google on the road, and he went to basically airport hotels, and people would fly in, and we'd fill a room with 30 to 60 people. And from the stage, we would set up stage. He would train these people. While they were there, they'd bring their laptops, we'd give them a workbook, and they would do the steps that it took to get them to rank on Google. And a lot of times, you know, in the early days of search engine optimization and search marketing optimization, all of that stuff, you know, you could see results relatively quickly. So that was a really good business model, because it was like, if you did the work, it was basically results guaranteed to all intents and purposes. And I was always there. I was in the back of the room. I was handing out workbooks. I was running microphones to people to ask questions. And when he sent everyone to the back of the room to fill out an order form, that's something that we don't really do anymore. I'm not sure if anyone on this call, if people listening on this call are Gen Zs, they've never went to the back of the room to fill out an order form. But for anyone who's a little bit older and they've gone to kind of like these seminars, they'll be familiar with that exercise where I would essentially be in the back of the room and it'd be like that 2-piece paper, the carbon copy. And they'd give us a credit card and I would write down the credit card number on this to process it later. Not something that we're very familiar with anymore. That's pretty much gone out the window. But that's the environment that I grew up. So I was always of the mentality that being an entrepreneur and kind of being a self-starter and being a provider was the only way, really.
Was that something that you minded doing? So it sort of
No.
sounds like work to me. So, I mean,
children are the best free labor.
That is one way of looking at it. But presumably you enjoyed being in that environment.
I don't look back on it with any sort of like resentment. I'm sure there were times where it's like, all right, Adrian, we got to go set up the booth at XYZ hotel. And I'd be like, ugh, I really don't feel like doing that today. But I never look back on it and think about like, oh my God, I really hated being there. I always liked being part of, I met tons of cool people, like even though I was relatively young at that point in time. I always liked meeting business owners and sometimes, people would come to 2 or 3 seminars and I'd get to see like the progress of their own business as we helped them. And I always liked collecting credit cards. That was something that I enjoyed doing. I like getting the order form and like filling it out and people like always got a kick out of that, right? Because there'd be like this 14-year-old kid at the back of the room, like, and they're giving this credit card to them and basically charging this person anywhere between $3,000 and $15,000 at a time. So they always got a kick out of that. So it was work that I enjoyed doing. We also did a lot of trade shows. That's something that, again, is not so prevalent anymore, is small business expositions and trade shows. And we'd set up a booth and that's how we would fill our rooms a lot of the time, is we'd fill the room from a trade show, like a franchise show or whatever. Small businesses, they see kind of like what opportunities there are. We'd always get the corner booth by the entrance with the most foot traffic and everybody would flow through like, digital marketing, what's that? That's new, that's exciting. And then my parents and I and a couple other people would be there and I would always be explaining kind of like the technical aspects, because that's always the thing that I was the most interested in, was sort of the technology that surrounded it and explaining to people the technology. And obviously that went over just like a bunch of people's heads. Some people were it clicked with, but most people needed exact step-by-step instructions or else it was completely beyond them. But that was the purpose of the course, right? So that's how, or was our selling tactics. It's like, hey, listen, doing this by yourself is a non-starter. Like, come to the course and you can just follow as we do it live and you'll get results like within the week. So fast forward from that, right? So I go to high school and then I go to university. I end up going to University of Toronto for computer science. Again, really just still interested in technology and everyone's building apps, right? Like that's just when in 2015, when I started university, everyone's building apps and I'm like, oh, that's cool, right? Like that's probably something that, I should be and fall on the bandwagon and figure out how people are creating like these billion-dollar companies overnight by seemingly providing absolutely zero value in return. So I go to university, and then at that point in time, my parents are running their own digital marketing agency. And they're doing essentially done-for-you services. At this point in time, digital marketing in 2015, it's way too complicated. The game has changed. Like Google's algorithm has been heavily updated in order to essentially make the lives of digital marketers more difficult. So it transitioned from a training company and providing education to business owners to be able to do it themselves to just doing it for them, because we're the ones with the knowledge, the expertise. And honestly, there's just way too many tools and way too much expense and way too many things that someone would have to know in order to be able to do it themselves successfully. I did university full-time for the first year. And then in second year, I was switched to part-time doing school at nights and then working with my family in the digital marketing agency, essentially full-time from a 9 to 5. Working with literally thousands of small businesses, well, hundreds of small businesses, but building thousands of strategies, campaigns, landing pages, websites, you name it, we did it. PPC campaigns. And I really built up like my knowledge of modern digital marketing and specifically CRM and email marketing, which is what I do now, throughout the 2 years, the 2 additional years that I worked full-time within the agency. I also built my first actual software product during that period of time. It was called FormLift. In the digital marketing agency, we used a CRM and marketing automation tool called InfusionSoft for the majority of the businesses that we worked with. Essentially, if you're not familiar as a business owner or as someone who's looking to become a business owner, if you're not familiar with marketing automation and CRM, having a product and selling it is one thing. Being able to do that efficiently, effectively, and with minimal overhead, and being able to get people to rebuy that product over and over and over again is another thing, right? So you can't you can have an absolutely fantastic product, but no one will buy it unless you have like the marketing piece and the customer relations and your audience and all of that. If you don't have that piece, then no amount of a great product will be able to actually move or generate sales. So businesses would come to our agency with great products. And they're like, well, I have this great product. How do I get people to give me money in exchange for it? And that's what we did. We'd help them identify their target audience and their ideal customer. It's amazing how many people build a product and they have no idea who it's for, right? That's probably the most interesting thing that I've encountered, and probably one of the most disastrous steps that a business can skip over. Like, it is essential to know who you're building a product for. So we would help them actually identify who that person was if they didn't already know. Then we developed the messaging on how to communicate the benefits of said product to said audience. And then we'd actually set up the engine to make that audience aware of this product's existence. That's what I did for 2 years with that agency. I used it for myself to build that first product, FormLift. I mentioned InfusionSoft, by the way. That was an integration between WordPress, which is our content management system of choice. If you're building a website, WordPress is like the de facto most popular option. It's like 30%, 35% of the entire internet at this point, something ridiculous like that. So it was an integration between InfusionSoft and WordPress. And it's a very niche product. Does around, I think at its height, it did around 60K USD in a year.
So do you set up a company for that product?
No, we just sold that under, the agency. Okay. So we didn't set up a whole separate legal entity for that. We just set it up as a product provided by the agency. It created recurring revenue for the agency, which was great because obviously we'd use it for all of our clients and all of the agency clients. So that was a good kind of retainer model. We'd have them buy FormLift and some extra cash and like, oh, who's FormLift sold by? Well, technically it's us.
So are you like, do you feel like you have a job within the agency, or are you partly running it?
Okay. It was both. I was certainly responsible for producing results on behalf of clients, but I mean any person within an agency is responsible for that. I did take direction, but I also gave a lot of direction. So if I had to equate it, it would be like C-level, but the organization was pretty flat for the most part in terms of like who was in charge of who. Like, so was it a job? I mean, I collected a salary, but I was family. So I did it because I enjoyed it, and I did it because I like helping people. I mean, the reason I wake up every day and do what I do is just because I like I like helping people, and I like helping small businesses get better results than they're currently getting. I like seeing the transition from struggling to creating an abundance of wealth, and seeing how what I produced and what my team produced had an impact on that. So that's the reason I do what I do. So I certainly enjoyed working within the framework of an agency. But during that time is where I also ran into a few issues. So those issues being that agency work is hard, as I'm sure you're familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Running an agency, HR is incredibly difficult, because one of the biggest problems that agencies have is that it's really hard to hire smart people, because smart people who know digital marketing are doing what? Running their own agency. Right? So it's super hard to like hire like incredibly talented people, because anybody who's incredibly talented is probably doing it for themselves, or collecting like a high six-figure salary from some sort of massive venture capital funded startup or whatever. So HR was always hard. Number two, clients can be incredibly demanding. And the hours are hard, right? Because yes, it's like 9 to 5, but really it's 8 to however early in the morning you want to work. Because when you have deadlines, stuff's got to get done. If it's not done, well, then that looks bad on you, and you gotta make the results happen that you promised.
One of the questions I was actually going to ask you was, why is it that you didn't go into your own agency? But is that what you're explaining to me now?
That is what I'm explaining. So clients can be incredibly demanding if you don't train them right, and they don't know exactly how to work with you. And if you let a bad client in, it can ruin the whole experience and just make your life miserable. And it's feast or famine with agencies. That's always how it's been. It's either like you're doing really, really well and you have like 16 clients, and then the economy takes a nosedive like COVID did, and then all of your clients are all of a sudden like battening down the hatches and stoking their bank accounts with all extra cash flow that they have to create that rainy day fund. And then all of a sudden digital marketing agencies, they're like, okay, well, now we have to lay off a bunch of people. This happened to a bunch of agencies that are my customers right now for my software, and they're like, hey, listen, we're struggling right now because all of our customers are getting spooked by the fact that there's a lot less money going around. Or we do work with brick and mortar stores, and guess what brick and mortar stores aren't doing right now? They're certainly not working. So that was so it's feast or famine with agency, and I didn't like having sort of that looming over me, that uncertainty of revenue and cash flow, and knowing that it having little to no control over someone's willingness to invest, right? When your salary is directly correlated to the strength of the economy, because like when the economy is good, business is booming and everyone's making money, businesses are a lot more willing to reinvest that money into making more money with digital marketing agencies. But when all of a sudden it drops, right? It's like, all right, well, we need to reinvest this money into rent at this point because we have less customers coming in and we need to cover rent. So all of a sudden we're not giving that money to a digital marketing agency anymore. So that was problem number two. Problem number three is that there were significant efficiency problems in being able to deliver projects fast. And this is kind of where and this is the reason where I am now, is working with tools like ActiveCampaign, InfusionSoft, and HubSpot. I identified a number of efficiency problems that prevented me, a digital marketing agency, from being able to deliver a client project in a week versus like a month, which is what it usually took. Like I knew if certain tools and certain software existed and they operated in certain ways, I would be able to deliver client projects multiple times faster than what we were currently doing. So at the end of 2018, so in the first half of 2018, I dropped out of university. I was doing it part-time. I failed a course. Wasn't a great moment. And then I did the math on how long it would actually take, or how much time it would actually take to complete my degree. And in 2018, I calculated out to something like 2025. And there was like, there's no way I'm spending another 7 years in university. It's just, I'm not. Like, I know how to produce wealth, right? I did that through the agency. I'm doing that through FormLift at this point. Like, I know that how to create things and how to create results that people will be willing to pay for. So at this point, university was like, well, I got my 3 years in. It was a good time. I did the university experience and I dropped out. And then in the later half of 2018, I was doing the agency thing still. But as I mentioned, I was running in all these things like a feast or famine and like clients and all of this stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do the agency thing forever, right? That's not who I want to, like, that's not the legacy that I want to create. So what can I do instead? Well, I have identified all of these like efficiency problems as working within the confines of an agency, trying to create results for clients. And like, well, if this was, you know, if doing this specific process was different, would I be able to create results for clients faster? Yes. If this process existed in a different format, if this system was a little bit easier, if this feature was built in this specific way. And then from designing my first product, FormLift, I inevitably ended up creating a minimum viable product, an MVP of what my company today is, which is Groundhog. It's a WordPress plugin. It's a CRM marketing automation tool. It just plugs right into your WordPress website, and it makes building marketing automation and email marketing campaigns and managing contacts and sales pipelines and payments and all this stuff just infinitely easier. And now what I do is I go to other agencies and I say, hey, listen, you know, this is something that you can use to avoid all of the issues and the pain and the frustration that I experience as an agency from your own agency. And that's how I got to where I am today.
And we're at present day, are we now?
And we're at present day. Well, 3 years later from 2018. Obviously, a lot's happened in that period of time. But to the point from where, you know, I learned about being an entrepreneur, which was many, many, many years ago, to sort of when I started my own business, something where I am on the incorporation papers, as it were, that's registered and we pay taxes and accountants and all of these things in order to like run an actual business. That started in 2018. So it was a little bit of a journey to get there, but we got there eventually.
Well, I can have my, I don't know, preconceptions about why it was that you decided to go into entrepreneurship based on the story that you've told. But why is it that you think that you're well suited and you were prepared to go in and start your own business, essentially?
I mean, to me, there was really no other option. It's kind of like a nature versus nurture thing. My nurture was certainly that entrepreneurship is acceptable. Risk is acceptable. Risk has never been an issue for me. Like I know people who are like incredibly risk averse. Me, I thrive on being outside of my comfort zone. That's where I operate best with new experiences and solving problems and overcoming obstacles. Like that's just always been where I've just been the most comfortable, oddly enough. Like
is that because of your early days of work, though? Is that because you got experience in doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly like in school growing up, I'm always incredibly competitive and always kind of going the extra mile to create something interesting, to do something interesting. Never sat in the back of the classroom. Like I'm one of those people, right? Always at the front, always asking questions, always kind of going the extra mile. But that's just kind of the way. That's kind of just the way that I was. I was always just incredibly competitive, and where that came from, I don't really know. I don't know where that came from. Like even as early as like grade 1, like I was like 7. I remember playing like chess with, there was a chess club in like my grade school. And I remember losing a lot and I just hated it. Like I was just it like ate inside of me. And I remember that feeling. And to this day, like I like on chess.com, like I'll play for hours until like I just have like one of those like losing streaks because your brain's fried and it's like, okay, well, that's enough of that. This is too painful.
Well, I think that competition and creation are certainly helpful as entrepreneurs, but I do think there are plenty of competitive people as employees, within companies. And I certainly think you probably had a skill set to go and be a successful employee. But in terms of why you chose entrepreneurship, I was thinking maybe peer group. So you're around people. First of all, you were around your parents who proved it was possible, and you got a lot of that experience.
Hundreds of business owners. I think one of the things, or one of the questions that I always ask myself, right, was, so at working in the digital marketing agency. So this is the most recent experience, right? Working within the digital marketing agency, I'll tell you a story. We had a raw dog food company as a client, an Ontarian raw dog food company. They just opened a brand new factory. They were already doing gangbusters, but they came to us because they wanted to have a digital launch event of their new website, which they got done by another development agency. So they created this brand new like online store experience, and it was really cool. And they wanted, on launch day, they wanted to have this big launch and tell their entire list. And they had a deal, which was their idea, which I think was really, really good. They were going to give a free dog food bowl, like this like stainless steel bowls, really high quality, was branded, to orders over $250. Like, this is expensive dog food. And it's small. It's like these small containers, right? So they're going to give away this free dog food bowl to orders over orders over $250. And their account was assigned to me. So I follow Russell Brunson, I follow Dan Kennedy, I follow like all kind of like the big digital marketing leaders and thought leaders, and I buy into like a lot of their stuff. Like I went to ClickFunnels and Russell Brunson's funnel hacker conference, and that was a whole big rah, and I was like super inspired for like a week and then calmed down. But so here's what we did. I wrote a 9-day email sequence. They had a list of around 9,000 people, I believe, or 19. It ended with a 9. And I set up a series of 9 emails. The first email read something a little bit like, hey, listen, we have this new thing coming out. It's not quite ready yet, but we're getting ready to show you. And I'm just going to let you know that you're going to want to watch out for my email tomorrow to learn more about what it is. Right? Like, just super like cheeky, markety, whatever. It is what it is. Like, as marketers, we see that stuff in our inboxes and we're like, okay, like, here we go. Right. But when you're doing like a business to consumer, like this was a consumer product, you can get a little bit, there's a little bit more leeway to like play with it and get a little bit cheeky as a marketer. And then the next day, the email's like, all right, here's a little bit more information about what it is. We can let you know that there's going to be a new online experience. Be happy to share you more tomorrow. The next day, another email. The next day, another email. And the owners, the business owners, were actually getting emails back to these emails, feedback from their customers, from the previous customers, and people just on the list, being like, I don't want to wait. Just like, what is it? And we were able to build out like this massive amount of curiosity. And then on the last day, it was basically a tell-all email. It's like, go to the website, orders over $250, for the first, while supplies last, adding that urgency, adding that scarcity, right? There's not an infinite number of dog bowls, right? So while supplies last, get your free dog bowl. And we sent so much traffic on day 9 on a Saturday to that website that, because the email went out at midnight on the Saturday. So at like 12:01 a.m. and it crashed. It totally just total meltdown, like server meltdown. We sent so much traffic to that website, and they were paying through the nose for hosting. So their agency, the agency who actually built the website, set up the hosting and everything, were like online at like 1 a.m. to like, I think 6 a.m. trying to get this website back online. It was just a total meltdown. Despite that, once they finally figured out, how to find their ass in the dark with a flashlight and a map, we did over $150,000 worth of dog food sales in that weekend. And that was kind of when the penny dropped for me. And I was like, well, if we can do this for other people, like, why can't we do this for us? Like, we didn't make $150,000 this weekend. Like, that's something that I would personally like to be able to create for myself. And it's not possible to do that when you work for somebody else. Mm. If you're working for somebody else and you do that, it's going into, well, not necessarily their bank account, but the business's bank account. But guess what? You don't have access to that. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think at the end of the day, entrepreneurship was really the only option for me, because I was able to consistently create these results for other businesses. And it's kind of like shoemaker's son syndrome, where you are unable to focus on your creating value and wealth for yourself because you're focused on creating it for other people. And at the end of 2018, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go create it for myself. And we're going to build this organization. It's going to help people. It's going to create a lot of value for people, but it's also going to create value for us. That's going to be sustainable. That's going to grow. That's going to be predictable. And create a legacy moving forward.
Do you think that it's possible that it's something as simple as you can see that it's possible and you have the competence to do it, whereas maybe other people may not know that it's possible and they don't have the skills?
Maybe. You know what? It's possible that it's that simple. Thinking that you don't have the skills, though. I mean, I certainly have skills in development. Like that's where my roots are. Is just in writing code. Like I'm really good at that. But I also learned kind of how to be a marketer and an entrepreneur like my entire life. And I was very fortunate to be able to grow up in that kind of surroundings to enable me to think that this was anything but possible, right? Like when I started Groundhog, I didn't have like the typical anxiety of like, this isn't going to work, right? I don't really suffer from that. In my mind, there was never any doubt that it's going to work. We knew who our audience was. We knew we had a good product. We knew we could help people. And those are kind of like the three things that you need to have in order to be able to run a successful business. Obviously, there's a few logistical things that you might need to know, but then again, those people can be paid for, right? Like the course that I failed in university was a math course. Math has never really been my strong suit, but guess what you need to know a lot of in business is you need to be able to know how to do addition and subtraction, and because you got to do a loss or profit, P&L, right? At the end of every month, profit and loss. But guess what? Those people exist to be able to do that. You just, give them read-only access to your Stripe account. And guess what? They'll log in and they'll do the numbers, right? Our guy's Gabriel is our bookkeeper, and he's just absolutely fantastic. And so there's people who exist out there who are relatively inexpensive that are there to support you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, someone with vision, someone with gumption, someone with grit who wants to go out and change the universe. People exist who are just happy to support you in your journey and to enable you to go and enact on that vision. And I'm very fortunate that I have a network of people, both inside our organization and outside as advisors or just people that I can rely on, or temps or contractors or whoever, who can come in and fix a problem that I don't necessarily have the knowledge or experience to fix, and be able to fix that. Where to find these people? They're everywhere. You can just go into a Facebook group one day and say, hey, listen, I really need help with this one problem. I do that a lot. Like I even go to our own Facebook community, the Facebook community that we have for our customers. That's where I found our first support rep. Is I went into our Facebook group and I'm like, hey, listen, we're hiring for support reps. Like, is this anyone from our existing customer base who's already familiar with our software, who's already paying for our software, who already knows everything about our organization, want to come work for me and work for our organization and help other people who use Groundhog? And that's how we found Jesse, and Jesse's been great. And it's sometimes it's just that easy to find the people that are willing to support you on your journey. Not everyone wants to be, right, an entrepreneur. Some people just want to come from along for the ride, and those are the people that you need to find and support you on your own journeys.
Yeah, I certainly think I'm not one of those people who thinks that it's right for everyone, for sure. But coming back to what you said about marketing, I do think people who have a marketing or even sales background have a slight edge over those that don't when people go into business. Because it's that you mentioned Dan Kennedy. He's all about this in terms of what business are you in? Are you in the marketing automation business, or are you in the customer getting business? And he would always say, your job is to get
every business is in the customer is in the customer attraction business, right?
Yeah.
There's of course there's obviously different ways to monetize that. And at which point, and there's a little bit, it's not that simple, but it's every business needs customers in order to survive. Businesses without customers tend to go away, unless you're Uber, in which case you just kind of keep fueling the fire.
Just keep making them a loss as long as you can.
As long as you can, unless you have venture capital mountains the size of Mount Everest to burn, right? But I digress.
So if someone was watching this and they're a Gen Zer and they're interested and they're not too sure whether it's possible, they don't really know, let's say, what business they should go into, what kind of advice would you give someone under that general circumstance?
So that's really far down the totem pole of what I would call entrepreneurial awareness. So that's like, well, I want to create value and wealth around me for other people as well as for myself, but I don't want to do that in the context of working for somebody else, right? If that's kind of like where your mentality is. Number one is be sure of why you want to do that. Is it just because you want to get rich? Is it just because you want a yacht? Is it just because whatever? I find that when you have the desire to be an entrepreneur purely for the reason of creating personal wealth, tends not to go well for very long. Maybe early results. You have to be there's universal laws which kind of dictate human behavior and the outcome of events, which will determine whether or not you and your business are ultimately successful, like law of attraction, law of reciprocity, law of all these things. If you don't know about kind of sort of like these almost spiritual universal laws, I'd highly recommend that you go and do a little bit of investigation, a little bit of research on those. I dictate my entire life by them, and that's why I am where I am today. Well, one of the reasons why I am where I am today. There's a few others. But if you are getting into it for the purpose of helping other people get what they want and making an impact on the universe for the better and creating positive change in your communities, then ultimately, I think you'll be able to find success. If that is your ultimate goal, then people with that goal tend to be able to accomplish that one way or the other. Sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes 10 years, sometimes it takes 50 years, sometimes you're dead before it happens and someone else, you pass on the reins to somebody else and then it happens. But ultimately the change happens. And if that's the reason why you're getting into it, then that is a good reason. the law of reciprocity dictates that if you help enough people get what they want, you can have what you want. So if you still want a yacht and a plane and to live a lavish lifestyle, and I'm certainly guilty of that, and being able to do things without having the fear of essentially like financial constraints on that, that's okay too. It's just as long as you're helping enough people get what they want first, that ends up coming. So understanding that is certainly crucial. If it's just I'm trying to get rich, and you join an MLM, that's a really great way to get poor really quickly.
Losing your entrance fee anyway.
Yeah.
And losing a lot of time in the process.
Yeah, exactly. So number two, so that's probably most important. And I had an unfair advantage by my parents teaching me this at a very young age, and it's very deep rooted. So it's like a lot of people end up having to like remind themselves of this, and to me, it's kind of just like a second nature type thing. So a little bit of an unfair advantage, but if you're not there yet, go do research on law of attraction, law of reciprocity, and all of the other universal laws. Number two, you got to have something which actually adds value. So there has to be some sort of inefficiency. There has to be something missing from the marketplace. There has to be something that someone is struggling with that you have a solution to that problem, right? That's certainly an important thing to have when running a business. It could be your own intelligence, right? Intelligence is valuable, right? That's why digital marketing agencies exist. Their product is digital marketing intelligence and getting results for their clients based on that intelligence. So that is a product. There are other products like software products like my own, where we're solving very specific problems, which enable people to do certain like marketing campaigns and email their customers and manage their customers. So we offer a software solution. There's tons of other solutions, but you got to have something that solves the problem. Number three, you have to know who you're selling that solution to. If you don't know who you're selling a solution to, then you're going to have a really, really hard time selling it. I'm not the first person to say this, but if you sell to everyone, right? A lot of entrepreneurs think, well, we're going to achieve mass adoption and all 7.5 billion people in the world are going to be able to get value from this product. No, unless it's an iPhone, maybe. But you have to know, or you have to, at least in the early days, you have to choose an audience. You have to choose someone who you're going to sell to, because if you sell to everyone, you sell to nobody. Because there's so many other companies which use specific targeting on a certain individual to be able to identify them as a better solution than another product. For example, our CRM and marketing automation tool is very much geared towards digital marketing agencies, because we know that they're the best, they're going to be able to make use of our software the best. They also pay the most money, which is good for us, and they require the least amount of support, so the least amount of overhead. So overall, they're the most profitable customer that we have. So a lot of our messaging, a lot of our marketing, a lot of our targeting is towards the specific agencies. We spend a lot less time focusing on kind of like the general small business. We still serve them, and they still make up 60% of our overall customer base, and we're happy to work with them. But they require more support and they spend less money, so the margins on them are lower. So we spend less time specifically targeting those individuals. So you have to know who your audience is, you have to know who your customers, and all of your marketing, all of your targeting has to be specifically focused on this small group, a niche group, something that you'll be able to penetrate easily. And if you don't know who that is, spend the time to figure it out, hire an agency to help you figure it out. There's lots of agencies that offer that kind of service of being able to help you identify who your target audience is. We worked with a car wash in the agency. We worked with a car wash once, and their audience was, people who owned Ferraris. They were like a Ferrari detailer, and that's what they did. And they also got business from people who own Bugattis and Veyrons and Maseratis and all of the other kind of like high-end Italian cars. But all of their marketing was focused on like the Ferrari owner. And that kind of brought in a whole bunch of other like exotic car owners to their car wash detailing service, but they certainly weren't marketing to people who own Toyota Corollas.
That is niching, isn't it?
Yeah, and they certainly weren't targeting those guys, but because they chose a niche of people who own Ferraris, they could charge $3,000 to $4,000 for a detailing service for someone who owns a Toyota Corolla isn't going to pay $3,000 to $4,000 for a detailing service, right? So if you choose an audience who might be a bit more affluent than someone else, you can also, guess what, charge more for your products, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand. That's a lot of information. Those are the three things that I would certainly think about first. And then it just becomes a question of doing. Like, do you have the knowledge to actually build a product or create a product? And sometimes you don't even have to build or create the product. You can pre-sell the product. That's what like tools like Kickstarter are for example. You don't even have to build it. You just have to tell people that you will, and then you can get backers, or you can get venture capital, or you can get all these different things and fund it that way. And that way you can then use that money to go find the intelligence to actually make the product or whatever it is that you're going to sell. So there's lots of different ways that you can accomplish this. There's 1,000 different ways to cross a room. Obviously, if you have the intelligence to build it yourself, like I did, that's going to make it a lot easier. If you don't, again, there are people who exist in the universe whose sole purpose is to support you in your journey to creating a mark on the universe, right? Not everyone is an entrepreneur. A lot of people out there in the world, there's like 4 kind of main categories of people. There's controllers, there's analytics, there's supporters, and there's promoters. Those are kind of like the 4 categorical types of personalities. A lot of people in the world out there are those supporters and those promoters, the people who are going to let other people know about their products. There's the supporters, the people who are going to be your accountants, your support reps, your sales reps, the promoter would be the sales rep, but certainly your support reps will be supporters. Your analytics will be your CFOs, your money people, your analytics people, and then you as the entrepreneur are the ultimate like controller. You're the person who's kind of setting the vision, steering the ship, and guiding everyone in your circle of influence towards an ultimate goal.
It's a great breakdown. I appreciate the sharing there, and it highlights something for me, which is I often have people on the podcast who are not marketing based because I already know a lot of that information. But what happens is that the people who view the podcast don't necessarily get to hear it. So I appreciate the value that you've added there. One thing I did want to ask you about is you got a long career ahead of you, or a long business career. What are your goals? What have you got on the horizon for you?
So my ultimate professional goal, at least for my organization, for Groundhog, is to be able to provide agencies and small businesses the complete suite of tools to be able to sell, market, and deliver their products, and be the de facto solution for those businesses using WordPress. WordPress is kind of like the campground that we chose to play in. And we're on a mission to be the de facto solution, much like if anyone who's familiar with the WordPress industry, like WooCommerce operates something ridiculous, like almost like I think 70% of all e-commerce sites is like WooCommerce. And that sounds like a great place to be. So we're on a trajectory to essentially be the market dominator for our CRM and marketing automation product, and be at that level of market adoption for small businesses and agencies. It might take a while to get there, but that's our trajectory. So professional goal there. Personally, I'm an ambitious guy. And one of the things, I mean, the reason I wake up in the morning, and like, I don't consider my business work, right? I don't get up in the morning and I think that, I have to go to work, right? If I was, if my girlfriend let me, I would work all the time, nonstop. Like I thoroughly enjoy it because I just love helping people, and I love helping people get results. And I love just being there to support other businesses on their way to creating their own impact on the universe, and knowing that I had a part of that. And I'd be able to like to do that on a much larger scale than what I'm doing now. So personally, I am on my way to being a leader in the small business and the agency community, and being able to provide and share the information like I'm doing now on global stages, and being kind of not necessarily up there with Dan Kennedy and maybe Russell Brunson. That they offer different value than I think that I offer value, but certainly having that same level of recognition, so that what I know and the value that I have to offer can be disseminated on just a much larger level than what I'm currently able to accomplish. So personally, that's where I would like to inevitably get to, and be able to just help people on a much larger scale. Professionally, for Groundhog, de facto solution and mass market adoption in the CRM marketing automation category.
Interesting. I would say that based on what I've heard and also the answers that you've given today, I think you're capable of a lot more. So,
well, the year is young.
got a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah, we got time. That's something that I'm not too concerned about.
Have you ever heard of the big hairy goal or whatever it is?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, I think especially with like information givers like Dan Kennedy, for example. I mean, highly influential. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, yeah, you got an awful lot of time, and I think you got an awful lot of knowledge and skills. So I think we're going to be hearing from you, Adrian.
Oh, I appreciate that sentiment, and I hope you're right.
So, where is the best place for people to find you?
All right, so I'm available in a lot of places. One of the things that has ultimately helped my business's success is the fact that I make myself incredibly accessible to people with questions and people who are facing obstacles, not only with our software, but with business in general, and me being able to help them along the way. So if you're in a situation where you need a little bit of guidance and you need a little bit of help, here's the best way to get that in an efficient and timely manner. So you can find me personally, adriantobey.com, where I have every single one of the shows that I've done, very similar to, or shows similar to this one, shows that focus more on marketing, shows that focus more on specific like business strategies, all of those recorded, linked on my website. So if you just want to like go on an Adrian Tobey binge and see all of the value that I have to share, you can certainly do that there. There's also a link just to shoot me an email, and it's my personal email address, and I'd be happy to email you back and see if there's any way that I can help you on your own business journey. So again, that's Adrian Tobey, TOBEY.com. You can also find me at groundhog.io. That's Groundhog with 2 G's. And that is our software organization. We got live chat there. So if you're interested in the actual like software aspect of my professional career, you can find that there. I'm also on Twitter. So if you just want to @ me, it's @ Adrian Tobey on Twitter as well.
Well, thank you for all that. And again, thank you. I reiterate, thank you for all the value today.
It's been my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. I love talking about this stuff in hopes that someone listen to it and learn something, and that's able to steer them in the right direction.
I'm sure they will. Adrian Tobey, thank you very much.